Alright, so we have a male. We know it's a male because we can see the hook and claspers down in here. We've opened everything up, and let's go through just some of these basic structures so that we're all familiar with this. We looked at it in the bigger shark. Here's the smaller shark. We'll see it once again. We have our liver, and that liver separates off into 3 lobes. The 2 lateral lobes are very long, and then we have this shorter medial lobe. Okay. Remember, the liver is going to help with buoyancy. It's filled with a lot of lipids. The side here of my medial lobe to the liver, you can see it's discolored. It's lighter, much lighter than the rest of this dark gray. And that's because this is my gallbladder. Okay, the gallbladder is along this side here of the medial lobe of the liver. All right. If I take this liver and I move everything off to the side, move all of it off to the side, you will see my stomach. Okay, stomach is rather large in the shark here. Remember, if we opened it up, we'd be able to differentiate between where the stomach is and likely where the esophagus is. The esophagus has those esophageal papilla, whereas the stomach is just going to have those rugae. Okay, allowed to expand so it can gorge on food. Now, this guy is a little small, so it might be hard to see, but we can see that there's the greater curvature and the lesser curvature, especially if I start to peel, separate here my main portion of my stomach to the pylorus. You don't have to know the pylorus. Okay, if I flip it over, you can really see it. All right, so it just goes up like this and comes over, curves. Take a look at your textbook too. You can see it much easier in those figures, obviously. And we would then see that the pylorus here would turn into a small tube like structure here. It's my intestines. And the intestine in particular, right after I go from the pylorus, is the duodenum. Okay? And in between the two, duodenum and pylorus, would be my pyloric sphincter. Pyloric sphincter. Now let's keep going with this, and then we'll come back and look at some accessory structures. But here would be my duodenum, and then you can see how it gets much larger in this area here. Much bigger diameter, circumference. This is now the valvular intestine. Now remember, the valvular intestine has the spiral valve within it. We showed you that, what it looks like on the inside. And that's increasing the surface area for absorption to occur. That's analogous to the small intestines, not the large intestines. If I continue down posteriorly, we see that this then narrows into a smaller structure. This would then be my rectum. Technically, there's a colon, then a rectum. That would be analogous to the large intestine, obviously, in the mammal. And you can see that it opens up right here. And we're within the cloaca at this point. So this opening within the cloaca would be the anus. Now, if we look behind that, you can see here we have this finger-like projection. This is my papilla. And since this is a male, that's my urogenital papilla. Okay, we saw that in the female as well. And that is within the cloaca. Cloaca would be right here. Alright, the last thing I want to show you, I want to zoom in on. If I go to the back end here, you'll be able to see some discoloration. As I go from the body wall to the central portion of the shark, it's white here in the central portion because that's you're looking at the vertebrae. But from the muscle body wall, in between here and that vertebrae, you can see this darker tissue that's lying on the other side of the pleuroperitoneal cavity. It's retroperitoneal. It's my kidney. And I separate it out a little bit here. Let me bring you down a little bit further. right in here you can see it much more easily because I picked away at that pleuroperitoneal lining, and you can see my kidney here very easily. So it's this darker coloration. It runs all the way up. If I move some of these structures out of the way, move you up with me. That kidney will continue running all the way up and run to the testis. Here's my gonad. Now, this has been slightly beaten up, it looks like. Maybe, I don't know when or how it got a little beaten up. Remember, the testis is joined to the body wall via a ligament, and that's going to be the mesorhachum. Now, it's technically a very broad ligament, just like you're seeing here, this ligament joining the intestines, the stomach and such, to the body wall. It would look very similar to that for the testis. That's the mesorhachum. The mesorhachum joins the testis to the body wall. Sperm is produced in the testis and will travel to the body wall through the mesorhachum via efferent ductules. You won't be able to see those efferent ductules. You would need like a microscope or a magnifying glass at the very least to see them. And since this is extremely beaten up, it's barely even here now, the mesorhachum, those efferent ductules are going to be impossible to see. Once we get to the body wall, you can see here's my kidney, the darker color. But you can see the darker color of the kidney, just before we get to the vertebrae, there's this whitish tube running behind everything. This whitish tube, if you're all the way in the anterior portion here, is very large and convoluted on one another. You might not be able to see it so well, but note where we're at. We're all the way next to the gonad, next to the testis. Thus, this white tube running ventral, so from our viewpoint on top of the kidney, is the epididymis. The epididymis then turns into, once I get right around here, I'm now much more posterior from the gonad, the testis, comes the vas deferens. And you can see the vas deferens, it kind of squiggles its way through on top of, ventral to, the kidney. Now the kidney in the male shark anterior portion is analogous to the prostate gland and bulbourethral gland in that it's producing seminal fluid. It's not filtering blood. And that seminal fluid would be added to the archanephric duct. So if we're looking at how sperm travel, sperm is produced in the testis, moves from the testis to the efferent ductules to the epididymis to my archanephric duct. My archanephric duct then straightens out. Let's move you down a little bit. You can see how it was all squiggly here, the archanephric duct, and becomes very straightened here. This is my seminal vesicle. And obviously, all of these structures are repeated on the other side. It's symmetric. And if I go all the way down, and I look by the cloaca, those seminal vesicles become very thickened and sac-like. That's now my sperm sacs. See how it was really, my seminal vesicles were here. They get a little broader. Right by the cloaca, these would be my sperm sacs. Right by the cloaca. Going to be hard to see. So just remember, if you're right next to the cloaca, it must be the sperm sacs. From the sperm sacs, they then empty into the urogenital papilla and out. Sperm, that is. If I were to go below my seminal vesicles, so dorsal, there would be a small tube which we're really not going to be able to see, and that was the accessory urinary duct. That was transferring urine that's filtered from the posterior portion of the kidney out through the urogenital papilla as well. Note, I also have back in here this finger-like projection, this gland. This is my digitiform gland. It's going to assist with osmoregulation, dumping and retaining salts from a patch of skin that would sit right by the cloaca. You may talk about that in class. I'm trying to think if there was anything we may have missed. Come back up here. One thing I think I forgot to come back to. I'll zoom you back out. We were looking at all of these structures, these bigger structures. We saw this very nicely on the female. When I'm looking at the greater curvature of the stomach, there's this structure back here. This is the spleen. When I'm looking at where the pylorus would be and my duodenum, right in here would be between the two. Right around the duodenum here, this glandular material, which is probably hard to see in the video, that is my pancreas. And it was a lot easier to see, I think, on the larger female shark that we had. You can see on this side, once again, my testis is up here. Mesorhizum joining the testis to the body wall. Efferent ductules going through. Epididymis would lie along this region. Here you can see my archinephric duct straightening out as the seminal vesicles. Seminal vesicles go to sperm sacs all the way down by the cloaca and then out to the urogenital papilla.